Welcome to the Vital Connection, where we are committed to doing ministry together. Our goal is to strengthen your connection to other church leaders and equip you for more effective ministry in the work of making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Now here are your hosts from the Dakotas Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Welcome to the Vital Connection as we're doing ministry together. This is episode 13, and I am Sherry Meister, the director of the Dakotas United Methodist Foundation.
And I'm Rebecca Treves, the Director of Ministries for the Dakotas Annual Conference, and we are excited today to have on the show Jeff Pospisil, our Director of Finance and Administration, sat down for a conversation with Reverend Jenene Earl, the pastor of Sturgis United Methodist Church, to talk a little bit about generosity and steps of faith and seeing God working through it all. So we're excited to have you listen.
Well, hello, welcome to this episode. This is episode 13 of the Vital Connection, and I'm here with Pastor Jenene Earl of the Sturgis United Methodist Church. Welcome, Jenene.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out and being here.
Yeah, Jenene, you are kind of a quieter person, so tell us a little bit about what you've been doing over the last years of ministry.
Okay. I came to the Dakotas Conference in 2004 and served at Highmore, Herald, and Blunt for about 7.5 years, and then came here to Sturgis, where I've been also at this point 7.5 years. So, yeah. Cool. And I've enjoyed being in this conference. And
so where were you before the Dakotas?
Before the Dakotas, I was a lot of other places, but I grew up in western North Carolina, and so that's where that accent comes from that you hear. But, yeah. And then, we were recruited in seminary and came out to the Dakotas to see what it was like and invited to stay here. And we said, yes, we love it here, so this is definitely home now for us.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I'd always... in all honesty, I don't know you as well as I know other pastors, but I just remember your district superintendent, Kevin Kloster, he was saying, about a challenge you put out to the church, and the challenge that I understood was that we need to have apportionments as a priority. And even as you should almost pay apportionments before you even pay my own salary. And I thought, what in the world is going on here? So I don't know, would you be able to tell the rest of that story?
To the best that I can remember it. I know that we had been having conversations about the fact that we weren't paying apportionments and that we wanted to do that. And we were paying part of it. We just weren't paying the full apportionment. And there was a lot of talk about what that would look like. And we had been talking about tithing and how we saw that as important as individuals in the finance team and in the leadership of the church, and that was what we were doing as a church as well when we were paying our apportionment. And I had this idea in the back of my mind that I should make this offer to them, because at the end of every meeting, I'm always praying that the Lord will provide for us according to His riches and glory, and all this bold stuff that I'm claiming to be true. And the passage about test me, and that kept coming to my mind, and I was like, wow. And I should say something. I should really say, I trust God is going to provide for us so much that we should pay those apportionments in full, and I just really believe God's going to take care of us if we do that. Yeah. And so I was thinking, well, if I really believe it, how much am I willing to put out there for that, And so the thing that came to mind was, well, then they don't pay me. If God doesn't take care of us, then, I'll give up my salary. I'm the one who's taking the biggest chunk of money here, so I can do that. So I didn't say that the first meeting where I thought of it, but then I came back to a second meeting, and I'm a great believer in God's timing for things, that there's these windows of opportunity, and, jump into that when it's there. And so that evening we were talking, and I don't know how it came out, but I just knew that was God's timing. And I said that about, well, if we can't pay our bills, then just take it off my pay.
Yeah.
And everybody just stopped and looked at me and said, okay,
she's serious.
That's an
basically
interesting comment there. And I said, yeah, I'm sure my husband will think it's interesting too when I tell him. But God has been very faithful, and we have had the money since we started this process, and we've been able to pay all of our bills, and I've been paid every month, and we've paid our apportionments in full. And so
it was interesting because you guys are paying, and I'm only roughly guessing, but close to about 25 to 30% of your apportionment before that, and then it's just grown, and it has been shocking. And it's nice to hear that this was part of overall challenging personal stewardship, and then it's also modeling it at the larger level. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Did you regret saying it at first, or?
Well, after I said it, I thought, wow, that maybe I should have thought more about that. But I really did feel like God wanted us to take that leap of faith, and that I needed to push that forward and be part of that happening, that it was God's timing for us to do that. And so, it all came together. So. And
you guys have been in part of the MCCI process,
yes.
right? And so this was, so the timing of things, when did MCCI happen? When did this challenge happen? I'm
not even sure. One of the things that happened with us was that before we were invited to be part of MCCI, I had started a group, a visioning team, I called it, and we had been meeting together for about a year before the MCCI invitation came. And so we were already kind of implementing some things, and we were thinking that we've been paying the apportionments for about 3 years.
Yeah.
So, it may have all started about the same time.
Okay.
As far as the conversations of, we need to move forward. It was all like something's happening here, and it was part of that process.
It is interesting,
perhaps.
all that timing, because that is interesting. Yeah, MCCI, the challenge, the visioning, all of that kind of
just came together. Yeah,
and partially, I think about this church was kind of in a healing mode when you got here. They had you were the fourth pastor in 3 years. Yeah. They had taken a step of faith to buy a parsonage right before that, and then it was like boom, boom, boom. We bought a parsonage. Why can't we keep a pastor for longer than a couple of years? So, I mean, how long did it take to build trust with this church, to where they think that you're here to stick, you're for them, you care for them, you're going to stick around? So
I don't know if we've even gotten there yet.
Okay.
I think it's amazing that you can be with folks, and it takes years to build those relationships and to build that trust. And I think when you get to the 7-year point, there's that going back and forth between we trust you, but maybe now you're getting ready to leave or something, or something's going to change again. So I think you go through those stages where there's a few years where you're like, everything's good, and then they're like, I don't know how that all works out.
I don't know either, but I just think even that statement that you made, putting the challenge out there, that had to be, I want to say that helped everything move forward. If you're challenging them to set a vision and to change some things, and then you're willing to put yourself in a place where you're kind of vulnerable. So that was...
And, as far as that building of trust thing, too, I think that probably wouldn't have happened in year 1 or year 2, that it did take the time that has been spent with them, and for that to come about.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed about is I've seen some excellent turnaround in numbers, almost like what you're talking about with the numbers. Not only the apportionment numbers, but I mean, one of the things that stood out really big is your youth numbers. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that, and then I've heard, and then some of your attendance numbers and the other numbers. I like watching the numbers and everything else, but I think that's kind of an indication of what the Lord's doing there. But I mean, one of the new initiatives you did was the Adopt a Business one. Yeah. So where you adopt a local business, and that was a big change probably for the people. How did that come about?
That was all part of MCCI, and one of the prescriptions had us having a blessing team that was looking for ways specifically for us to bless the community and people in the community and let people know that this church was interested in what was happening here in Sturgis and not just inwardly focused. So we have been choosing a business each month, and we give them a letter and drop that off in person, explaining what we're doing. And people are a little bit weirded out by that sometimes. Like, we're just wanting to let you know we're blessing you. We're praying for you. And we've had some really, really good responses, and people have told us, that was the best month that we've had. As we've had some new businesses and said, we're praying for you, and they've been like, wow, that was the best month that we've had. And then we also had another business that closed right after we prayed for them. So we were hoping that was also God's working and answering maybe their concerns at that time. But it's been an interesting thing, and getting to know people in the businesses we try. Some of them it's interesting, the businesses that you choose, because it's easy to do when it's the sub shop, and you can say, not only are we going to pray for you, but we're going to send people
to buy sandwiches.
When it's the funeral home, you do. It's a little bit different.
How do you pray for that
business? Yeah, we pray for strength for the people and wisdom and whatever God's blessings would be for them.
Because you try to encourage extra business from your parishioners. That doesn't.
We have to adjust the prayers a little bit, depending on the business.
You got to hold a legacy workshop on that, so people get their wills done. Anyway, sorry. That's interesting. Yeah. Because that's a specific thing. I mean, in Sturgis, a lot of times during the rally week, you got a bunch of outside vendors come in, and the people that are here year round, I don't know, that really touches at their heart, because they can feel like, they're the ones sticking it out. Yeah. Why aren't we supporting them more? Right. So instead of supporting these in and out people.
Yeah. So we're trying to find people to encourage, and
How has that changed the outlook? I mean, even in terms of trying to reach new people, I mean, all churches are trying to reach new people. Has that opened the eyes of the church to who's out there that's not in the church?
I hope so. I hope that they're seeing that and thinking of that, because I think most of us, we tend to think that everybody in town is churched, and we know statistically that that's not true. Yeah. I think it's just part of the package of helping people to see the community and to see the needs that are there, maybe, or just to see who's out there that they don't know and
to bring their faith out to the community. Yeah. A lot of times, I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody, but I'll talk about church stuff in church and business stuff when I'm out in the community. So for the first time, they're coming out there and saying, I'm a Methodist Christian, and I'm here to support you and pray for you. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So we've encouraged people to go, and I don't know how many people are going and making those statements, but I do know someone commented to me in one of the businesses who said, he didn't know at first what was going on, and people kept coming in and saying they were from the Methodist Church and that they were praying for him, and he was a little confused. So we need to make sure we get that notification out there first thing. So people aren't confused. But I know that people are saying that they're going and saying we're praying for you.
Just have you chosen a bar?
We haven't yet.
I was just, is that I don't even know. I know we're standing on alcohol. I didn't know how that would fit or anything like that.
Right.
Anyway,
why not? Yeah.
I don't know. So, personally, I'm going to back around a little bit. Can you tell a little bit about your own personal story about stewardship and your understanding? If you're challenging people to tithe,
right?
I mean, how did you come about tithing? I mean, what led you to? What was the breakthrough for you?
Okay. I grew up in a family where tithing was taught. I mean, we had been part of congregations where tithing had been taught, and in my family, my parents practiced tithing. They taught us as kids to tithe, and when my husband Martin and I married, he was a man of faith, and he tithed, and I tithed, and it was just part of our life. And I didn't really think much about it. Yeah. It was something that I had been taught that you do as a Christian. And in recent years, and having to explain that to people and talk about that with people, I think the direction that I tend to go in is not that this is an obligation, which was kind of what I was led to believe, as part of the package and part of the rule following that you do. But that it's a spiritual discipline, and that it's something that helps you grow in your faith, and it's a reminder of where you're putting your trust. Yeah. And do you trust Jesus completely? And do you believe that Jesus is going to provide? And every time you put that bit of money in the offering, you're saying that here it is, here's my life, and I trust you.
How could you trust somebody? If you won't trust them with your wallet, will you trust them with your soul?
Right.
Right. Yeah. That is interesting coming around that way for the idea of obligation, because the vast majority of Christians don't tithe, or many of them don't give even generously by any standard. I had a financial secretary that complained because more people were giving more to the Sunday brunch than ever to the offering plate. Wow. So how do you make that? But I like your stance on there, trusting, and cool.
And it's something that's for our benefit and to help us grow in our faith. Not just something that we have to do or that the church wants us to do. And that's hard for people to understand too, because so many people see that as something that the church is trying to perpetuate its own system, and they want your money, and
but it's really not about that.
Right.
That is cool. So how have you seen people? I guess how have you seen people affected by that message? Have you seen? I've seen a little bit of a turnaround in finances. For I see growth in benevolent giving and other apportionments. We talked about that. So how have you seen the response from people?
Just trying to think about specific stories. I think there has been a change, and there are probably some folks who have made changes that in their life that I don't know anything about what that has been for them. But I do remember one woman coming to me many years ago and asked some questions about some things that she was reading in Scripture that were really challenging her in that area of tithing, and she felt really convicted about it, and we had a conversation about it, and she said, I'm going to try this. But she was on a fixed income. Yeah. And so this really was going to change her life. I mean, she was afraid that she was going to end up short and things weren't going to go well. And she started tithing, and she said that it had been fine, and she didn't know how it had been fine or how it could possibly work. but she was my number one voice for talking about tithing after that, because she started telling people her story of how she was on a fixed income and she could tithe, and that was a new thing for her, but God had been faithful, and just what a blessing that had been to her. So yeah, there are those folks out there that have experienced that and grown in that level. And
I love those stories.
Yeah,
right? For me, I've experienced something similar. It would seem like we started tithing about the age of 26, I suppose. You know, we came to it. We were in a church. Kermit Culver was the pastor, and he kept challenging us. And eventually we gave in. And again, the math didn't make sense.
Right.
But it seemed like for me, every time a big bill would come in, I would get a big check or something like that. Or every time a big check would come in, then a big bill would come in. You know, sometimes the timing was reversed, but it was amazing to see God's faithfulness. Yeah, that is amazing. So
yeah, and we've seen that, you know, in the church with the apportionment thing of we're saying we're going to be faithful and we're going to do this, and things happen out of the blue that, you know, a check comes that you weren't expecting, and what you thought was going to go in one direction is, you know, all your expenses are covered. And
well, how hungry, are people to see God do something amazing? And in your life, when the math doesn't work out, you know, for me, that's where it shows up, when this does not make sense. Mm-hmm. Cool.
And I think it's all, you know, part of the larger picture of inviting God to be at work in your life, and inviting God to lead you, and to have the Spirit lead you every day, and to lead every part of your life, not just, I don't know, the Sunday morning part, but, you know, every aspect of your life. And last week we had an interesting thing happen, which I think was supposed to be a lesson for our congregation and for what God is showing us, is that I was preparing, I was picking songs for worship, and kept going back and forth with this one song that kept coming to mind, and Shall We Gather at the River, and we haven't sung that you know, in ages, and I kept thinking we should sing that, and then I was like, why should we sing that? And coming up with different things that would tie in with the message better. And on Saturday, this guy contacted me and wanted to know if he could play a song during worship, as part of worship, and he wanted to play a musical piece and do that with the organist. And so I said, sure, let's just do it. It was just kind of out of the blue, and he contacted the organist and the other musicians, and they started talking, and the organist called me, and he said he already knew what the song list was, and he said, he wants to play Shall We Gather at the River.
Wow.
He said, isn't that a weird thing? I said, yeah, that's a weird thing. That's pretty cool. And then he came in, and I had another song, and his second choice had been one of the other songs that was like second on the list. And he had been hearing something from God about this song as well, and we were just talking about why did we need to have that happen, and that sometimes that's just another sign to us that God is with us, and God is leading us, and if we'll just listen and take those next steps, we can see the hand of God at work in our lives in powerful ways, and just be reminded sometimes that God's there, God's listening, God's hearing.
I think that's a word for, a lot of our churches and church leaders need to hear. I like that, because a lot of times we try to figure things out all the way. We try to plan things out, or we just grumble. You know, it's just easy to do one or the other, try to overplan or grumble why it's not happening, but a lot of times God just shows up.
Yeah.
And
when you're just plodding along, doing the everyday things, and you think it's not going to make any big difference, and God is there and knows what's going on with you and what's happening.
So I got to ask, because it's not I don't think it's not automatic. People are sensitive to the Holy Spirit like that.
Right.
What do you do to actually cultivate that in your life? I mean, what do you do to make yourself sensitive to the Holy Spirit where it's not just a job and it's not just a business? It's because we could all do smart things and make improvements, but the Lord, if He's the builder and
for me personally, I'm always inviting the Spirit to be at work in my life, and I'm always desperate for God to work through me and to do the things that I can't do, because there's a lot I can't do, but I invite God to work every day. Every day.
Yeah.
And I think when we do that, God surprises us and shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah.
So
I think that is one of the things that I encourage folks in the church to do, is to invite God to be at work in their lives
and to actually follow through then.
Yeah, and then act on what you're shown. That's the hard part always.
I think so too. I'm an introvert normally too, and so like the word like that will come to me like it came to you about the apportionments, and a lot of times I want to think that over.
Yeah.
I don't want to spit it out yet.
Right.
But a number of times then I've had to come back. I normally don't get the second opportunity though, so they don't invite me back to preach. No. So. Well, I don't know. Is there any other advice, especially to those pastors that are struggling in this area of, I think a stewardship of being faithful with finances, or encouraging your church in that area. I mean, do you have any last words that you would like to?
Yeah, I guess it's just a matter of trust on all levels. Yeah. Just keep trusting, keep seeking, keep trusting that.
Yeah.
Well, Sherry, that episode, listening to that really just made me smile. I mean, hearing that initial story that Jenene started off with, that story of really her step of faith, kind of feeling God nudging her to say, hey, if you want to help challenge these people to grow and yourself, maybe you need to take a step of faith and sort of test me and my faithfulness, and even putting your salary on the line, and just to hear her response to that. I mean, that's a powerful witness to say, I'm ignored it maybe for one meeting, but I didn't ignore it completely. I, went ahead and put that out there, and I just thought that was a powerful testimony and witness to her of her faith.
It truly was. And she's so sincere about it and humble about it. And, she's got such a quiet spirit that she brought being so genuine to the meeting. And, she didn't present it as a threat, or she didn't present it as, if you don't, I will, or, any of that. It was so sincere. One of the things when I was listening to it, Rebecca, I was wondering, you've been in those situations where budgets are kind of tight and things, and how would that feel to you as a pastor to come forward like that? I mean, that had to resonate a little bit with you on some of the situations you were in and how you would handle that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think anytime you're talking about money, and I think we experience this in our personal lives, in our homes and our family budgets, but also in the churches, the anxiety can raise. I think that's probably why Jesus talked about money a lot, because he knew that could really flare up our worry and our fear and that. And so to want to really have the Spirit enter into that and respond to where she felt God nudging, it reminded me of this past week. I was listening to Pastor Eric Van Meter of Dakota Wesleyan. He was speaking about faith and practice, that they're not two separate things. It's actually faith as practice. And it kind of is that sometimes that we do things that they seem like acts of faith, but they're really a practice so that your faith grows. And for her, that's what resonated with me. She had to take this step of faith, which actually helped her trust in God grow, and it helped the church's trust in God's faithfulness and provision grow. But they first had to take the step of faith. It wasn't, well, God poured out this, and so now we can respond faithfully. It was, we're going to practice it, and believe that it's going to happen. But it was an actual action. I mean, that's taking those steps are difficult.
They're very difficult. And to do it with such sincerity, I think just really resonates with who Jenene is and the ministry that she provides at Sturgis. One of the other things that really stood out was her intentional prayer. The prayer that she has through each one of the things that she does, bringing prayer out into the community and praying for the businesses, and how they were at first a little uncomfortable with that and wondering who are these Methodists that are coming out and praying in my business, and but to be intentional and to be consistent with that, and then having others within the congregation do it as well. And so to go from where they were in their apportionments to 100% apportionments through the act of prayer and through the trust in prayer. Right now I'm reading a book on Imagining Abundance by Carrie Robinson, and it's for a certification program that I'm going through next week. And she has been a huge working with philanthropy and development officers and such for years in faith communities. And each one of those steps, she, not being a pastor, but she works with prayer and has seen the abundance come through the act of prayer. And so it was interesting to be reading this book at the time and then also hearing Jenene say the same thing. So
yeah,
cool
we often talk about it. And I know a lot of the work that you're doing with the foundation, sort of creating this culture of generosity. And what I loved about the stories, sort of how she lived in it. The apportionments was just one piece, but the ways that the church said, we want to get out and bless our community. We want to bless them with our prayers, with them knowing that we care about them. Really, it was like being generous with their lives, with their time, with their attention to their neighbor. And I mean, that was just a powerful testimony that I think the being generous with their financial resources was one piece of that. And also I think helps, it all works together. It cultivates that culture of generosity within individuals and within congregations. And then it spreads into communities. And in a world, in a time where it can seem like we kind of want to hold things tight to ourselves and scarcity, and kind of look out for ourselves, make sure we have enough. This was a powerful story about looking beyond ourselves, beyond our fears, beyond maybe what we need or our church needs or as individual in that moment, and being generous with our lives. And that really was a great reminder in this time, and I hope that all the listeners were also encouraged by that as well.
I think the other piece of that, and you illustrated that wonderfully, is that it's not just a checkbox. They're not just done. Once they met their apportionments, we're done. We did it. It's the Holy Spirit working for a greater cause and continually. And there's more beyond the apportionments and all of the work there is to do, and all of the great things happening go beyond that. And it's not, I think sometimes we get caught up in that is a checkbox. Okay, we did that, we're done. And we don't see the continuum.
Yeah, and just realizing that's what whole life discipleship is about. So, well, again, we hope that all of you just found some encouragement, maybe some ideas or inspiration from this conversation. There'll be some resources in the show notes, ways to connect, whether it's with trainings or resources. We'll be sure to have Sherry link the book that she referenced also in the show notes, as well as contact information for any of us here, as well as Pastor Jenene, because again, we want to be reminded that we are in this together, that we're not alone on this journey of continuing to fulfill this mission that we're called to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world.
Thank you for being part of the Vital Connection. Join us next time as we seek to do ministry together.